Welcome back to FreightWaves Now on this Wednesday. It's time to catch up with our air cargo editor, Eric Kulisch, and we're going to talk a little bit about some more airlines making the flip-flop from passenger service to cargo service. Eric, thank you for joining us. It's interesting to see that these passenger airlines are still continuing to capitalize on the continued cargo momentum.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote several stories this week and we can get into them, but the general theme is just unusual characters or actors getting into air cargo beyond traditional airlines or cargo airlines. And what you've seen is, retailers and ocean carriers and passenger airlines specifically, standing up freighter divisions when they used to just carry a little bit of freight in the belly of the passenger planes.
And Eric, who are going to be some of the airlines that we're looking at? Venezuelan Air is one that kind of pops up. Is that one of those airlines that we've kind of seen making that shift?
Yeah, so one story I reported on yesterday is actually a Vietnam Airlines. I was digging through the second quarter earnings for a U.S. company called Air Transport Services Group. They're the largest leasing company for freighters in the world. They have cargo airlines. They do all kinds of cargo related services. And, one of their businesses is leasing out aircraft. And, they mentioned that Vietnam Airlines is one of their new customers. Vietnam Airlines, relatively large regional carrier or large carrier in Asia, but they don't have any freighters. And so they're taking two Airbus A321 planes, which are, your standard narrow body plane, and they're taking them out of their fleet. They're going to send them to ATSG, one of their conversion facilities, probably sometime next year, have those converted into cargo planes and then start up a freighter division. So that was an interesting development. And then we also have, another player in South America. The largest carrier in Brazil is called Gol Linhas. They are starting up a new freighter division with 6 Boeing 737-800s. It's another narrow body standard jet, but they're converted freighters they're getting on lease. And the interesting thing is they're going to fly those for a company called Mercado Libre. And that basically is the Amazon of South America. They're really big in many countries from Mexico all the way down to Argentina. And so they, just like Amazon, are really getting big into logistics to ensure they can deliver things to all their customers next day, second day. And so they've started an airline in the past year or so. And now Gol is going to be one of their contract carriers. They have a couple other small ones, but Gol will be the largest, and they will fly in Brazil, cutting some of their delivery times from several days to 1 day, between Sao Paulo and other cities in Brazil. So, that's an example of not only a carrier, Gol, but also a retailer, Mercado Libre, kind of getting into the air cargo sector.
Eric, we talked about that yesterday in our headlines. We just kind of glanced over it briefly, but it left me wondering about how many other, kind of Amazon competitors we can see pop up like this. Obviously, Mercado Libre is focused mostly on South and Central America. They're trying to be kind of the Latin America equivalent to Amazon. But how do they stand up in the fight against a retailer like Amazon, who has a global footprint and a global presence?
I mean, that's a great question. I'm not that familiar with how the geographies of all these companies, overlap. You have Amazon, you have Alibaba's logistics arm called Canal, and they're expanding globally. And then you have Mercado Libre, and there's other of these online platforms. I would say, Amazon and Canal are, the biggest, in this logistics space, and having air networks, usually with, they don't fly themselves, but they have contract carriers. But Amazon doesn't really have an international fleet. Most of their flying is within the U.S. They also have a small airline network in Europe with some small aircraft flying some routes from Germany and so forth. So they don't fly in South America yet, and that could change over time. So Mercado Libre within South America is going to have be able to support its business there, and doesn't have that kind of competition from Amazon yet.
And Eric, when we're looking at Gold, what are going to be some of their freighter strategies when we're looking at conversions and things like that?
Well, they, like I said, they're getting these 6 Boeing 737-800s. The first one, they're converted freighters from a leasing company, and the first one will go into service, I think, at the end of this month. And then they get 5 more, and then they have options for 6 more after that if they want to keep expanding. I would note, on this theme of airlines that have made entries into the freighter area and recent developments this week. Also, Air Canada made some big news in the last few days, and they were one of the first ones, in the past year and a half to make it clear that they're starting a freighter division, and they're going in a big way. A year ago, they said we're going to take 8 of our Boeing 767 planes and convert them to cargo planes. And those are larger planes, mid-size wide bodies. So they already have 2 of them in service, but they just announced last week in their earnings that they bought quietly 2 factory-built 767s from Boeing that they will put into service early in 2023. And they ordered 2 Boeing 777s, the largest of the wide-body planes from Boeing. So that order's pending, but it just shows that they want to go, more long haul, more international, and are really, taking this freight business seriously. And in fact, they had a 42% gain in their cargo revenues for the second quarter over last year. So they've really done well in that area.
So, Eric, with that, has Air Canada announced any of their plans on what routes they're planning to increase that they're running, or is that going to come as they more kind of reveal their extended plans for their both passenger and cargo side?
Yeah, I think I haven't heard anything specific, although I think they've, interestingly, they still dabble in the cargo-only aircraft, which, remember during the pandemic, many of the airlines couldn't fly much, so they, repurposed a lot of planes to fly in this cargo-only mode, as quasi-freighters. And so they still use a few of those planes, and so they're adding some routes to Shanghai or to China, back to Toronto. But mostly they've transitioned most of those planes back to passenger services. Passenger flying, really picks up again. But as far as the freighters, not sure exactly on what new routes. I think the freighters right now are flying. The 2 767s are flying to Europe a little bit and down to Miami, Mexico, some South America routes.
And Eric, of course, these stories just came out with Vietnam Airlines and Mercado Libre. But are there any other stories that you're going to be looking to work on over the next week that we can get a little bit of a sneak peek to?
Well, just some interesting capacity additions for air cargo, and it's not just passenger airlines interested in controlling or having their own freighters. It's logistics companies having controlled assets that, they don't have to be subject to the, vagaries of the spot market. They want to control planes. So we've got DB Schenker, one of the largest logistics companies, just chartered a long-term charter from LATAM Airlines to fly from Europe to South America. And, also DSV, another logistics company, contracted with LATAM. So you have a lot of these, logistics companies doing these charter deals.
All right, Eric, thank you for joining us this morning. Interesting stuff coming out as always. We'll talk to you again soon.
Take care.
All right, we're going to head back over to the wall once again. We've got our next carrier update of the morning with Tony and Donnie.